Evening, everyone. This is Diama Battle, and I have a very special guest with me this evening, Mr. Ryan Edwards. And we're kind of just going to talk about the life that we've had together as musicians and dancers, and the fact that Ryan had come to the art of black dance and music earlier in the late 90s, 97, 8, and 9, right?
That's right.
And he hails all the way from Michigan. And in Michigan, he had his own dance company of dancers and drummers in a tradition from West Africa. And I believe that whole tradition, that whole experience, enabled him to go to Guinea, West Africa, and do some extensive studies in the culture. Ryan, welcome. This is the Art of Black Dance and Music's archival project.
Right on. Well,
you are
me.
part of it. You are very much a part of it.
Wow, thank you.
And there's one story I do want you to tell.
Okay.
Now, when you came to ABDM earlier on, I remember you telling me that your mom and dad were coming to Boston to see, I think, basically why you left Berkeley. And it was because you wanted to come and drum and work with Art of Black Dance and Music. I want you to just say a few words about that little experience. It was almost like mom and dad coming to check on her son.
Sure.
You know?
Well, at the time when I left home to go to school, they were highly suspicious of my decision not to go to university, but to play West African music. I mean, I left home with the djembe and a mission. And they didn't have any context on how, what does that mean? Where is that from? Who is this kid we raised? I mean, they were just confused. And it was a very complicated time for my parents, frankly. And after 2 semesters at Berkeley, I did drop out. And a big part of that was I would say 2 things. One, that I started to identify the difference between music and culture in a folkloric music and in a cultural setting.
And
it like actually happening versus it being institutionalized.
Right.
And as a teenager, I hadn't really considered that. So I just enrolled in college, and it took a few months to kind of go, whoa, I'm studying this music in this really sterile environment. And while I really appreciated what I was learning, it didn't feel right. And all the while, I had been exploring opportunities to study and play and really just play my music for dancers. And that's what introduced us, was my interest in finding dance classes and opportunities to really apply this and just like get to it. And I remember one day in particular, I had a music technology class like on a Wednesday at 11 a.m. and you offered me a gig. And I was like going,
okay.
Music technology, and this is in the 90s before, anyone who kind of zoomed out a little bit would say, like, that's probably an important class, and I use the computer for music all the time. But I thought, are you kidding me? A gig playing djembe with Diama and her group, or music technology class? Like, I skipped class, and from there it was just simple. I knew that I needed to, if I was really going to do this, if I was really going to play djembe and really wanted to learn and absorb and live it, I wasn't comfortable with that road. And not to take anything away from the teachers and the program and the approach of the institution, and Berkeley in particular. And as you know, I went back.
Yes, right.
But at that point, I thought, I just need to get this straight. And you offered me one of the most important opportunities, especially at that time, to like just get with it.
Get with it. Get with it. Well, that kind of motivated you to really delve into the culture, because you ended up, after working with us for a couple of years, you ended up going to Africa on your own and trying to find those keys to the drum, to the culture, to the dance, to the language. And you ended up in West Africa, in Guinea, West Africa.
That's right.
And I was so impressed with that. And I said, wow, this young kid is going all the way across around the world to study the drum and the dance. And so I was really impressed with the fact that you did that. And you did it in a span of several years. So I was just saying to a friend of mine that I pulled up your website, and I was really, really excited about the trailer that you have on Village Life in Ilimanye, I guess it is, right? Am I
Ilimanya.
Ilimanya.
Yeah.
And so it encouraged me to go with you one of those years, and I was very much impressed with the way you handled that. And I know I was trying to be like a mother and say, now, Ryan, da 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 da. But I followed you basically.
Yeah.
And it was like the most wonderful trip I've had in a
Wow.
long time.
Wow.
A long, long time. And so when I saw the trailer, I said, oh, Ryan's got to come in and talk about this a little because I don't know anyone else who's done that kind of, who's covered a culture the way you did in those few years.
Wow.
So I wonder if
you
you would talk a little bit about that and let our audience know, what that lifestyle is like.
Sure.
And are you doing a full-length film? Are you
There was so I can set it up a little bit. I mean,
yeah, okay.
I went to Guinea the first time when I was 19, and that was the trip you were just referring to. So I really left, you here to go to Guinea. I was living here in Boston at the time, and really, really asked for a full, rich experience, and Africa delivered it in spades, and I got my butt kicked up and down, and really broke me. Honestly, I mean, I had a certain, naivete, but also bravado and an interest in certain things, and Africa just kicked my butt, and I came back so kind of hurt and humble and oh my God, I gotta go see Diama and tell her I made it. But truthfully, I identified that as really what I wanted out of life. I didn't want. I got what I asked for, was a rich, full experience, and I grew. I mean, really, it was my coming of age experience. I mean, you look at the picture of me from the beginning to the end, and it's there's a boy and then there's a man. He's lost about 15 pounds, but he's definitely aged.
Right. Right.
So.
Rite of passage.
I was so blessed, and I learned a lot. And I wanted to go back to study and continue my studies, but I also wanted to share even a part of that experience with others. So I went back to Guinea the next year to kind of lay the groundwork to organize and develop an adventure travel study drum and dance experience. And so I went back once after that, and then the following year was the year that you came with me, was the first year that I offered. I think it was in 2000. 2001 or something.
Yeah, 2002, I think. Yeah.
And that was, that ended up being the first of 8 years that I offered this drum and dance retreat to Guinea.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah, every year.
Every year.
And after this first or second year, I started by renting a facility, kind of like a public park kind of facility, and I use that term loosely, but it was some municipal kind of place, and really wanted to commit and really further kind of design an experience. So I bought land on the mountaintop above where you and I stayed, and built a retreat center and hosted the tour there for 6 years, and that grew and was wonderful, and also nuts, just crazy. I mean, everything that goes into construction in a place where there's no machinery,
right.
There's no track animals. It's just 18 guys moving this palm tree,
right.
Or whatever. So that was wild and super fun, and crazy. I mean, I used to have hair, and now it's gone, and I think a lot of it has to do with land ownership in Guinea.
Wow, that must have been quite an experience. What was the paper trail like to do that? There must have been.
That's so interesting because most people, especially in this tiny remote village,
right.
Don't read or write. So the paper trail is relatively meaningless. it has so much more to do with the relationships and the kind of process of, it had more to do with myself and my partner at the time in this project, Mila, with making connections with the village chief and with the elders who were going to sanction our project, and then maintaining a relationship with them.
I see.
So, and that was an ongoing dance,
Right.
and one that was fascinating, sometimes confusing and weird, but really, you know, again, another level of the experience that I was really asking for. You know, I didn't want just to go learn rhythms.
Right.
You know, that to me was like really, I mean, I would tell everybody, you could do that here. You can go to New York, you can learn the best stuff, best teachers, you know, and you can drink the water. But if you really want to like really get another thing, you really want to see where that comes from and really have your sense of where it comes from, and even deeper yet, your sense of self challenged, then travel. Then go get outside of your comfort zone. And I found in the traveling that I've done elsewhere that, you know, that place gets right to it.
Yeah, it
gets
does.
right to it.
It does. It takes you right to the heart of it.
Yeah,
You know what I want the audience to see is some of the scenery
sure.
on
Yeah,
your,
I can play
on
this
your-
trailer.
Yeah, play the trailer so they'll see
the
it.
story with this is that I don't know what year, 2006 or 7, a film crew from a documentary film crew from Seattle approached me about doing a documentary film that was they were interested in this drum and dance movement, as had, you know, by now we know is started by you and your peers in
Yes.
North America, now really has, you know, is more than a movement or a scene. I mean, it's a deep and ubiquitous part of culture in America. And they were really interested in kind of an American case study of how this is really being brought to life in America. And then they wanted to go to West Africa, and they needed the connections to get there to really kind of explore what is the kind of parallel community and expression in West Africa. So they worked with me to produce, I mean, they produced this film, and I was kind of part of their case study in the film. And the film a full-length film was produced and released and toured and was featured at film festivals. And so what I'll show you now is the trailer for that film.
The music of this place comes from this life. People transcend their struggle and they realize the realness of life is what's important. That word is what it's about. Survival. I'm a have. I live in the lands of the have. I go to the school of the haves to learn the music of the have-nots, to experience the music of struggle. What struggle am I enduring to earn that music?
I have been there before, and I knew, you know, why the djembe was so powerful. I knew that it comes from a very intense culture.
Everybody's just trying to survive, and this is one of our tools. Play this music.
Sometimes you feel like you've got nothing, but you've got a song to sing, a dance to dance, and you rise up.
We tell ourselves, well, I'm gonna go learn djembe and I'm gonna dance, you know, I'm gonna go to Guinea, the source of it all. You come to this place not for that. You come to this place to get shook up. They're looking out for one another. They're in this like big boat going like, we're eating today or we're not. We start to learn about the word survival, and then our definition and reckoning of that word is so far from its real meaning.
Brian, takes quite a lot. Tell me how this experience affected your company in Michigan? You had a dance and drum company, like Water Drum
Like water, drum, and dance.
and dance. Okay, how did that affect your company? Or were you able to bring any of that into your company?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And many of our company members traveled with me to Guinea year after year to study. I think I mean, there's a lot to discuss inside of, what was it that was driving us, and where did that come from? Why was this guy, why was I doing it? But to answer your question, my connection to a community in Guinea and feeling very much a part of that community, I think helped, I don't want to use the word legitimize, but really solidified. It really tied us in a very real way that I was annually studying this music and bringing it back to my community, to my group, but then also to my students. And I traveled all over the Midwest to teach djembe and balafon, and it gave me a very real connection to offer, something very fresh and something very real and something very current. And I think that was felt by my ensemble members, by our audience members, and by my students. Right. And I also was, I would go to Guinea and I would just study a few rhythms and really try to learn them, really learn the variations and how to speak the solo and learn the dance and really just dig in. So as opposed to learning from a book or a video.
Yeah, which is not really real.
Right. I mean, there's something there, but I mean, it's really just superficial.
Superficial, yeah. Because
So I
there's a
think
lot more to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to learning the music and dance
Sure.
than the book and the
I mean, I'll
video.
tell you, some of the times when I learned the most when I was in Guinea was when I wasn't playing and I wasn't dancing. And I would be, we had dance class every morning first thing after breakfast. And I would often take dance class, but at times I would need to have a little conference with my administrative crew. Maybe we needed to, send somebody to the market to get stuff, or there was some little crisis or something. And we'd have to have a little morning meeting so that the day, all the kind of things had to happen. So we would sit on the porch of one of the huts and we could see the dance space and the drummers. And there would be certain rhythms or dances that were being taught. And we might be having this discussion and then hear something and look, and I would be there with my good friend and my teacher, Mila, and he would say, look, this guy, he doesn't know the solo. And I would be like, what do you mean? And he would say, listen, the break's in the wrong spot. Or I would say, wait, that's not where he put the feet yesterday in Lamba. The feet were on a different side of the beat. And we would have these conversations from apart as we could kind of see a whole event happening and understand it and kind of reflect on it. And that, some of that was so insightful and I mean, let alone, kind of all of the other challenges.
Right, that you had
Yeah,
being there. I
yeah.
know. You know what I want to do? I'd like to see a little piece of your company
Sure.
in performance, and then I want to see what you're doing with all of this culture and experience and music education. What kind of music has evolved from all of that? I know you have your own Federator2 band, and then there's another kind of music for dancers.
Yeah, all kinds of things I'm hustling up.
Yeah, you're. A friend of mine used to say that she was a hustler of the arts.
You got it.
And so you're the second person I know that I can apply that title to.
That's it.
A hustler of the arts.
You got it.
And, we all have to kind of do that from time to time in order to stay alive in this business. And so it's like, okay, I can do this, yes.
Well, it's kind of like a conversation of academia, and I did go back to school, and I certainly, I can't just straight criticize institutional work, and I appreciate it. And I have one foot in that world from time to time. But I think for those of us who aren't kind of fully invested in the institution and the funding and the support and the kind of safety, relatively speaking, and I don't want to take anything away from how hard it is to be a researcher and a professor and a teacher,
right?
Because that's a huge social service, and I'm indebted to that as well. But there's a completely different reality of being a freelance artist which is a lot of hustling, you know, and it really is very much more raw and dangerous. And it is thrilling, which is probably the nicest word I could use.
That's a good word,
Yeah,
Ryan.
you know,
That's
it's
a good
exciting.
word. That's
Okay,
a good
so I can
word.
roll this in.
Yeah. You were playing a glass
Glass cymbals?
cymbal, was it?
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting as the other end
Yeah.
of who you are as a musician.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's see. You want me to roll something with that?
yeah. Do you have something handy
I
that we
do.
can?
Yeah. Well, this is from an installation I did with a good friend of mine here in Boston named Savis at the Boston Architectural Convention, I think last year, just over a year ago. And Savis is a glass artist, and we collaborated on a project to install these glass cymbals in a public space and activate them with light and sound. So they all, we actually built small LED light fixtures to mount on the cymbals so they were illuminated. And then we ran a small sensor to each cymbal so that when you touched it, the light would change and also it would trigger a sound. And we designed a kind of sound environment that those sounds fit into. So it's something like, I think in the end, something of a kind of hanging garden of glass and light. And meant to be curious. I think meant to just, you know, say, whoa, and really for it to mean whatever it might to one who entered. So there's a short.
Let's see that.
see.
That's what fascinated me so when I looked at your site, and I said, well, it's from one spectrum to another.
Yeah.
You know, which was very interesting. It's quite an effect.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. The creativity that came out of your head
Well,
is amazing.
Thanks. I think I could say that the even in that, and even in some of the more contemporary work that I'm doing now, which is kind of the dominant part of my work now, is not in folkloric music, but in contemporary new music and dance and installation work like this. That I'm really deeply informed and influenced by my training in West African music. And I really run the parallel, and I think it holds with many contemporary artists who have a foundation in some type of classical art, sculpture, violin, whatever their kind of classical background is, that gives them a framework to then depart from and to experiment.
Right.
And because, just pure experimentation, sometimes you can hit something, but if it's not grounded somewhere
Yeah.
that you can kind of bounce and push off of and have some type of a relative, experience to, it often just is fruity.
Yeah.
And not that a lot of my work isn't just fruity.
No, it's
but-
not fruity.
But there's a thanks. But there's I like to think, and I think at least in how I approach the work, there's a certain grounding in my West African drum and dance experience, and thinking of how the disciplines of music and dance relate, and how in a public setting those are kind of lived, informs how I design an installation and how I consider any of my work interfacing with the public. I mean, it's all in there.
It's all in there, yeah. And I find too that as artists, when we do start out as young people, like for instance, my whole thing was in classical ballet before I branched out into modern jazz, tap, and all the other stuff. And so it does that. Those beginning steps do set a pace, for you to continue on. So I think that our audience is going to be quite pleased when they see these different avenues that you, Ryan Edwards, have taken as a musician, as an artist, and as an educator as well. The thing I wanted to touch back on was, are you writing a lot of your music?
Yes.
You are?
Yes.
Okay. Are you publishing a lot of your music?
I'm licensing my music. I'm not publishing. I'm licensing the recorded versions. So a fair amount of my work over the last couple of years has been commissions to dance companies.
Good.
For primarily in modern dance, but in some ballet. So a choreographer will approach me about a piece or a show and commission so many minutes of music or a concept, and I will work with them to design, write, and record a score.
A score.
So as opposed to
Nice.
that being sheet music that's published, I mean, there certainly is an opportunity for me to publish that music and share it more widely. But for the most part, I license the music to that dance company for their use for a limited amount of time in the shows, or for a year or two for that piece.
Okay, so that almost makes more sense than trying to publish sheet music. But I noticed that some of the other groups have their music, it's written out in sheet music form. And when they deal with bands, they're using the sheet music.
Right.
And so this way, the way you're doing it seems to be a lot less involved in terms of paperwork.
It's less involved. I mean, I'm sure that I may be missing some opportunities to monetize what I do, but I'm most interested in collaboration, and in the opportunity to really take a concept, a movement concept, and find a sonic solution. And it's really satisfying and interesting to me to do that.
Good. So before we have to get out of this studio, I would like for you to just sort of mention how people can reach you.
Sure.
If if they want to book you or have
Sure.
you do a score of music.
Sure.
So what we'll do is we will put it up in print, but if you could just give a number, give a location.
Sure. Well, I live here in Boston, in Watertown specifically, and I run a studio out of my house, so I'm local and ready to write scores and to teach and hustle in any
I love
way,
that word.
But yeah, I'm local, and my website is my name, ryanedwards.info. So www.ryanedwards.info, and you can reach me there. Contact information and everything is at the site.
What about an email? All of that is the
all of
same.
that's there.
It's social media just still baffles me.
Well,
I'm
that's
not
why
sure.
I just keep one thing, and it's just my name. I mean, sure, there's other stuff,
but
but you can just go there.
yeah,
you know,
find everything in one
Just-
place.
We'll leave it like that.
Yeah. Ryan, thank you so much for being here,
Thank you,
and this has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
And it will definitely set pace in my archives.
Well, it's an honor.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And thank you, my audience, for joining us for this wonderful interview with Mr. Ryan Edwards.